The Flynn's keychain is here because today we're going to do another game based on an arcade classic, and that game is according to my podcast, I can't say that. Today's game is Mr. Dig Dug Wannabe. Let's go ahead and take Mr. Dig Dug Wannabe, pop it in my Atari 2600 VCS, and see how it holds up today. Let's go to the game. Mr. Dunn was published by Coleco and carries a copyright year of 1983. It is based on the 1982 arcade game by Universal. This version was programmed by Ed English, who also made the Atari 2600 version of Frogger. According to the manual, the goal of the game is to guide your clown through his orchard, harvesting cherries while avoiding and defeating the bad guys. Mr. Did is a Dig Dug style game for one player only. The game has 4 skill levels, including easy, harder but not as hard as the arcade version, arcade hard, and tougher than the arcade version. When you start the game, you use the joystick to move Mr. Not Dig Dug, and you press the button to throw your Powerball, which this week is worth over $100 million if you guess all 6 numbers correctly. You will throw the Powerball in the direction you are facing, but it will leave your hand at a diagonal downward direction. So if an enemy is right in front of you, but is in an open area, it's possible for the ball to go right below him. If the ball hits the enemy, it will destroy him, but if it misses, it will continue to bounce around the screen. Either way, you will have to wait for it to magically reappear in your hand before you can throw it again, which can either happen quickly or slowly depending on the mood of the computer. You can also crush enemies the humane way with gigantic steroid-filled apples. Just like Dig Dug, you can create tunnels through the fields, and if you mow out an area below an apple, it will fall, potentially crushing you or your enemies. You can also earn extra points for crushing multiple enemies with a single apple. Unlike Dig Dug, you can also push apples from the sides to the left or right. There are also several cherries you can harvest for points as well. Scoring wise, you get 50 points per cherry plus a bonus of 500 points when you collect 6 cherries in a row. Hitting an enemy with the Powerball will gain you 500 points, but you'll get 1,000 points for every enemy you crush with an apple. Speaking of enemies, there are 3 types, with each one costing you a life if it touches you. The standard bad guy cannot go through the fields, but sometimes they turn into a blue chomper who can go through them. There's also a special extra meter at the top of the screen. Sometimes alpha monsters with letters in their middle will appear when your score reaches a multiple of 1,000 points and a letter you haven't earned yet is highlighted in the meter. If you destroy an alpha monster, you earn that letter. You start the game with 5 lives on the easiest setting and 3 lives on all other settings. Spelling out the word extra in the meter will earn you an extra life. To complete a screen, you must do one of 3 things. Either harvest all the cherries on the screen, or eliminate all the enemies from that screen, or spell extra and get an extra life. Do any of the 3 methods and your game will move to the next screen, and this will continue until you lose your last life. Graphically speaking, the game looks pretty good for the 2600, especially the characters, including your clown, who was going to be a snowman with a rake in a Japanese arcade version of the game. Sound and music were also very well done on the system, including a great opening jingle and pitches that rise when you collect 6 cherries in a row. And yes, this is a family-friendly game, unless you think too much about how you're crushing your enemies with giant mutated apples. That would probably hurt. At the time of my research on eBay, loose copies were going for $10 to $15, and there was also one complete copy that sold for $74, including shipping. So what did I think of Sir Do? While it's missing some elements of the arcade game, overall I do think it's a well-made port for the 2600. I like both the graphics and the sound. With that being said, however, I just didn't care much for the game itself. I can't help but compare it to Dig Dug and wishing I could play the 2600 version of Dig Dug instead. I'll give it credit for the extra bonus and cherry collecting, but didn't care much for the Powerball, and also wish it allowed for more tunnels and less open areas. In the arcade version, when you move vertically, you can leave thin walls on each side when digging, but here the lack of those thin walls, while understandable due to the limits of the system, leave big areas, making it easier for enemies to get to you. So overall, this game is well made, but just not my cup of tea. So where am I going to rank it? Well, for me personally, it's going to be pretty low. I'm talking in the 70s. I'd rather try to conquer the tough controls of Double Dragon again at 75, but I will give it an edge over Sprint Master at 76. So out of the 97 games I've now ranked on the 2600, Mr. Whatever is harvesting into the 76th position. Personally, I'd recommend the 2600 version of Dig Dug instead, but fans of the arcade game might want to check this port out. At this time, I'd like to thank Atari.io forum member Rosdower for trading me so I could get a copy of this game. Thanks, Roz. So, mister, do you agree or disagree with me? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. Also, feel free to click the like and subscribe buttons. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/NoSwearGamer for more information. I'm also a member of the Retro Junkies Network. You can find more retro podcasts and videos at theretrojunkies.com. Thank you for giving me a little part of your day, and I look forward to seeing you next time in the next episode of the No Swear Gamer. Take care and watch out for falling gigantic apples.